And to paraphrase the Illustrated Dictionary of Architect... no. Aspetta, che cos'è questo qua? The Illustrated Dictionary of Historic Architecture. I just have to read it. So, I have an idea. Why don't we do the next unboxing of Squinch?
Hi, welcome to Unboxing Inanimatti number 6. I'm Fiorella.
And I'm Chris.
This episode is all about Squinch, who started as a piece of architecture and took us into different strange places.
Like this, where we tried to paint an idea of what it's like inside of her mind.
And speaking of strange mind, we want you to meet our writer, Ken Pontac.
My name is Ken Pontac, as has been recently established. I have been writing animation and video games and comic books for 3 decades at least. Good God, how is that even possible?
Yeah, this is cool. It goes on forever. I love it.
It's a big, long stroll.
Madonna's. You would think
It's crazy.
You're an old guy.
That's 30 years of work. Yeah.
Holy cow.
And right now I am working with Chris and Fio on their project and having a great time.
Our first stop to discovering a Squinch was to visit one, so we went to the medieval town of Roddi.
We are in Provincia di Cuneo, in the Langhe area.
Yes, this area is very famous for, well, tartufi. This is the truffles that people love to put on their food, but also, of course, wine.
Today we're going to visit a castle.
A medieval castle because it's got a squinch in it.
Squinch.
The character is Squinch.
Actual Squinch is...
Give zero about anything.
I'm a Squinch.
She's such a prima donna.
Squinch over here.
So Squinch.
A real medieval squinch. Thanks to the Barolo and Castles Foundation,
The Sindaco Prioglio and the Comune di Roddi, who allows us to shoot in this beautiful place.
well, that's a cool thing about the squinch is because it's usually not so decorative. You don't notice them, so there can be many of them, and they're ubiquity. You don't see them. But this one is actually quite beautiful because it is really nicely painted up with frescoes.
Beautiful and unique. The building dates back to the 1300s and the frescoes were added a century later.
Wait, you said a squinch.
Yeah, it's a squinch.
I think you should say they. At least she would refer herself using a we.
Like the royal we.
Yeah, the royal we for sure, and she would think she's the only one entitled to use it.
Well, this sense of three-sidedness, some say that the word squinch comes from an old Persian word that actually stands for three-sidedness. But this sense of support between below and above is what squinches are all about. They're this in-between, this three-sided thing in between.
Well, the arches make the third side of the room. And if you want to go beyond it, the number 3 returns many times in our story, starting from the Fabula Rerum. We have, in fact, will, joy, and love.
Which are the building blocks of the universe. Although, probably for Squinch they were manipulation, deviousness, plotting, other building blocks in the universe.
And we talk about spiriti, animatti, and inanimatti, again 3.
And these are the 3, let's say, sentient entities that Existenza created when she was working in the reality, mixed them all together. We are animati. She is now an inanimati, but before she was a spiriti.
So she's been 2 of those.
She's been 2 of those 3.
And one more thing, she's involved in a love affair with Titus and Trajan.
A little love triangle.
Have you got any advice for the poor guys?
Well, they should have a 3-way.
But besides that, Squinch is also a character. She is a story driver, so she kind of is story in that sense. So she's a narrative element for us, very important. But the third thing, she is also a metaphor for management thinking processes.
My first impression of Squinch was, oh, cool, a character who has multiple conscious nodes in different places, but her own form of autonomy. So even she won't necessarily agree with herself on what she's seeing and when.
Fio, we say that Squinch is everywhere, but like everywhere means like where. This is the map of Archie's world.
That sort of group mind character has always fascinated me in science fiction.
So how did a Squinch wind up in Archie Adventures anyway?
We needed a spy.
And we thought that this architectural feature was perfect because you barely notice it. It's way up in the corner of a room, and she has a nice view of what she's going. We thought she was perfect.
But it turns out we were happily misinformed because we were told that those triangular shapes are called squinches, but they're not. They're pendentives. So on the one hand, we had a name we liked, squinch, but then we had a shape we liked to draw, which was really a pendentive, because squinches are more difficult to draw. They have arches in them.
This started a nice discussion in the studio.
Yeah.
So instead of choosing A or B, what we did was we chose A plus B.
So we said, we'll keep the name Squinch, but we'll let her character be so powerful that she can co-opt the pendentives into her. And so actually they became part of her as well.
That is pretty much the reason that I like Squinch, is besides the fact that I could tell immediately with Squinch that she was fun to write, that you had fun writing her, and that if I ended up getting the gig, that I would have fun writing her. Snarky and verbose and gives zero, you're going to have to bleep this, gives zero about anything. I love those kind of characters. And when you have a character who is super snarky and has just a big attitude about everybody that she encounters, and is sort of semi-omniscient at least, so knows a lot of things, but only knows everything, but only gives this much because she's a stirrer. But a stirrer who cannot figuratively stir her own because she can't move. You know, it's a fun character. There's a lot of built-in things going on. Did you guys hear that? I get bleeped in my house.
When we say that Squinch is manipulative, it's not just that she manipulates other characters. She's manipulating the medium that the characters are working into. And this is where it gets into business and management philosophy.
So this room represents?
The medium,
That's everything around what you're doing.
the processes and rules,
The traditions, philosophies,
even daily routines.
and the individuals you're working with. They all make up the culture in which you get things done.
This is true for managers or for a squinch nel suo mondo, that of the Inanimatti.
Most managers don't know that that's the most important part, not just focusing on the individual elements. And Squinch is really good at this. She gets the medium around the elements to begin to shift towards her so that what she wants to have happen, happens.
You have to be in a rhythm system and not in a linear one to be able to work with the medium.
Yeah, and that's how Squinch's thought process works. Not in this chain of events, one thing after another, but taking in many, many points at once and trying to see how that whole thing is being configured to get the result that she wants to get out of it. Which includes you and I, by the way.
I like that shocked look on your face.
She became so powerful and so manipulative that what happened was this.
I'll show you with a diagram. This is
Holy cow, she draws backwards.
as inventing the story.
I'm impressed.
I didn't want to say anything, but I was pretty impressed too.
Yeah, really,
And at a certain point, we invented here the character of Squinch.
So what's the circle again?
This is us inventing the story. This is the story circle.
Okay.
And we invented Squinch at a certain point here. While talking about her, describing her, inventing, something strange happened, and it went like this. So it's like if she is telling now the story to us, and we have to go through her to understand it.
You mean she expanded outside?
See,
She's like encompasses everything. We're inside her now.
What happened there is that you kind of reached the writer's nirvana. You reached the point where you should be. There are times when I'll set up a scene and I know that there's this character and that character and that character, and they're going to be in this room, and I put them in the room and I know what they should be talking about, and I just kind of wait. Sometimes I'll go, okay, who's going to start the conversation? Who would say what? well, this character in their character would probably observe what's going on and say something like this. But after a short while, once you get in the zone, they start talking, as you, it seems, have begun to notice with Squinch, and you're just transcribing what they're saying. And the golden moment there is when Squinch says something so funny and arch that as you're transcribing it, you chuckle to yourself and think, I wish I'd said that. And at that moment, you're there.
But also, if you think about it, linked together like the Internet of Things, and of course how it is all structured, very much like AI, artificial intelligence.
Well, Ken refers many times to her, saying that she's the glue. And we can say almost that she's the glue, not only in our story, but also between medieval times and the AI and the Internet of Things.
That is really cool. You know, across time, you know, kind of an invisible glue, because really nobody knows about Squinch, but glue is supposed to be invisible.
Yeah, you don't see this unless you are Messi or your name is Kintsukuroi. And she would say that he's really a show-off in our story.
Kintsukuroi. Okay, here. Kintsukuroi is like worth another episode at least.
Yes, we went deep with Squinch, but Kintsukuroi is even deeper.
How kind of deeper? This kind of deeper? This kind of deeper?
You don't get me this time.
By the way, the guys have been working on a train for Arky's World. That would be a cool thing to look at next time.
Well, let's do it then. But first, we want to thank you, Ken, and let him say goodbye in his own way.
Thanks, Ken.
Bye.
Bye.
No. No, you're crazy. Don't do it. No.
Okay, that was really nicely done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's just see if we're in position here.
I get a compliment from my boss.
Yeah, you did okay.
mi stai mandando fuori.